Pittsburgh Penguins New York Islanders Brawl. The Penguins-Islanders Brawl was a National Hockey League NHL regular season ice hockey game between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Islanders that resulted in a record for combined penalty minutes for both teams. The game was played on February 11, 2011, at Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum, the home arena of the Islanders at the time. New York won the game 9-3. In all, 65 penalties were assessed, including 15 fighting majors and 21 game misconducts, resulting in a total of 346 penalty minutes. The high number of physical altercations was attributed to numerous on-ice incidents between the two teams throughout the season, most notably an incident during the prior meeting of the two teams in which Penguins forward Maxime Talbot delivered a hit to Blake Comeau that concussed him. Prior to the rematch, there were hints and indications from the Islanders that there would be retribution for the injury. The game itself featured two separate multiplayer brawls, one of which occurred after Pittsburgh's Tangradi took an elbow to the head, which caused a concussion. The NHL suspended 3 players for actions occurring in the game and fined the Islanders organization $100,000. After the disciplinary action was announced, Penguins owner Mario Lemieux questioned the direction of the league for allowing fighting. Lemieux was highly criticized following his comments, with critics noting that his Penguins team led the entire league in fighting majors. Previous game. The previous matchup, which took place 9 days prior to the brawl, featured several incidents that contributed to the hostilities between the teams. In the first period of that contest, Penguins forward Maxime Talbot delivered a questionable but unpenalized body check, the Islanders' Blake Comeau. Talbot was not penalized, and Comeau played for the remainder of the game, but was diagnosed with a concussion 2 days later. The injury caused Comeau to miss 4 games, including the rematch against the Penguins. A second incident occurred later in the game. With just 16.5 seconds left in regulation, Islanders goaltender Rick DiPietro shoved Penguins forward Matt Cooke as he skated through the crease. As Cooke fell to the ground, a scrum ensued. Penguins goaltender Brent Johnson skated the length of the ice and engaged DiPietro in a fight. Johnson threw a single left hook, knocking the Islanders goaltender to the ice. DiPietro was sidelined for 6 weeks following the fight due to facial fractures and knee swelling. Brawl game. The Islanders were upset over what had transpired in the previous game, and hinted that there would be retribution when the clubs next met on February 11, 2011. The game began as a penalty-filled affair as 8 penalties were called in the first period. The Islanders started the physical play early in the game, as Mitchell Haley was assessed a roughing penalty at the 2:37 mark in the first period. Halfway through the first period, the first fight of the game occurred when Haley fought with Craig Adams. A second fight broke out late in the period when the Islanders' Trevor Gillies squared off with Penguins enforcer Eric Goddard with just over 2 minutes left in the period. At the end of the first, New York had scored 4 goals on Johnson and led 4-0. Early in the second period, New York scored 2 goals just 30 seconds apart, taking a 6-0 lead. After the 6th goal, Johnson was pulled, and as he skated to the tunnel where the backup goaltender sits, he was showered with boos from the crowd, largely due to the ramifications of his prior fight with DiPietro. Shortly after Johnson was pulled, the first brawl occurred. Due to his previous hit on Comeau, Talbot was targeted by the Islanders players, and he was jumped from behind by Matt Martin. Martin's attempt to engage Talbot in a fight resulted in 3 separate fights breaking out. In his first NHL fight, the Islanders' Josh Bailey squared off with Pascal Dupuis, while the Penguins' Mike Ruck tangled with Travis Hamonic, while Martin fought with Durek and Jelland. All 6 players were automatically ejected from the game after each received 10-minute game misconduct penalties. Martin received an additional 10-minute misconduct and a 2-minute minor for instigating the altercation. Martin's minor was offset when Engeland was assessed a minor for roughing for his part of the altercation. 3 more minors were called during the period, which ended with the Islanders leading the game 8-2. At the start of the third period, Johnson returned to the game, and less than 5 minutes into the period, a second brawl occurred. The melee started when Gillies elbowed Penguins forward Eric Tangradi in the head. After the elbow, Tangradi fell to the ice, where he was continually punched. When Gillies was separated from Tangradi, he was given a 5-minute major for elbowing, a double minor for roughing, a 10-minute misconduct, and a game misconduct. Despite being ejected from the game, Gillies continued to taunt the injured Tangradi from the runway to the dressing rooms. Tangradi left the game with an apparent concussion. That situation was unfolding, other incidents were occurring on the ice. Haley fought Talbot, and, while that fight was being broken up, Haley skated towards Johnson. Then both players dropped their gloves and engaged in a fight. As Haley approached, Goddard left the bench to join in the fight and protect Johnson. Goddard was assessed a double minor for roughing and 2 game misconduct penalties. Haley received an instigator minor, 2 fighting majors, a 10-minute misconduct, and a game misconduct, the game misconduct being automatic for a third fight in a game, while Johnson was given a major for fighting. Although he was ejected from the game, the crowd chanted Haley's name for the rest of the period whenever a scrum ensued, another of which occurred at the 16-4 mark in the period that witnessed another 6 misconduct penalties. As the game wound down, there was yet another fight when Joe Vitale battled the Islanders' Andrew MacDonald. The fight occurred with just 2:47 remaining in the game, but it would not be the last penalty handed out, as just 15 seconds later, Ryan Craig was given both a cross-checking minor and a 10-minute misconduct. Both teams scored a goal during the third period, making the final a 9-3 Islanders win. After all the ejections at the end of regulation, the Penguins had 7 eligible players, while the Islanders had 9. Only 12 players from both teams combined did not receive any penalties: Marc-Andre Fleury, Alex Goligoski, Nick Johnson, Paul Martin and Jordan Stahl of Pittsburgh, and Bruno Gervais, Michael Grabner, Milan Jursina, Mikko Koskinen, Radek Martinek, Matt Molson, and P.A. Parento of New York. In all, 65 penalties were assessed, including 15 fighting major penalties and 21 game misconducts, for a total of 346 minutes. The penalty minute totals set team records for both the Penguins and Islanders for combined penalty minutes. Aftermath. The day after the game, the NHL handed out suspensions and fines for the incidents. New York's Trevor Gillies received a 9-game suspension, and Matt Martin was given 4 games for his actions, which NHL Senior Executive Vice President of Hockey Operations Colin Campbell described as deliberate attempts to injure. The Islanders organization was also fined $100,000 for failure to control their players. Pittsburgh's Eric Goddard was given an automatic 10-game suspension for violating league rules prohibiting players from leaving the bench to join a fight. Although such actions should result in a suspension for the player's head coach, the NHL elected not to enforce this rule. Tangradi, a recent call-up from the Wilkes-Barre/Scranton Penguins, suffered post-concussion symptoms, causing him to miss nearly 6 weeks of playing time, which had the additional effect of making Tangradi, at the time of his call-up the leading scorer in the American Hockey League (AHL), missed the AHL clear day, as he could not be reassigned while injured. making Tangradi ineligible to play in the AHL that postseason. Following the announcement of the suspensions, Penguins owner and Hockey Hall famer Mario Lemieux questioned the direction of the league. Lemieux released a statement on the issue, saying the NHL had a chance to send a clear and strong message that those kinds of actions are unacceptable and embarrassing to the sport. It failed. He further added, if the events relating to Friday night reflect the state of the league, I need to rethink whether I want to be a part of it. An alternate view was expressed by Toronto Maple Leafs general manager Brian Burke, who noted that he felt the NHL acted swiftly, harshly, and appropriately. Boston Bruins forward Milan Lucic agreed with Burke, stating that the NHL took a stand against line brawls and intent to injure opponents. Box score. Scoring summary number in parenthesis represents the player's total in goals or assists to that point of the season. Penalty summary. As noted before, there were 346 penalty minutes handed out in the game. Combined, there were 28 minor penalties, 56 minutes, 16 major penalties, 15 of them were for fighting, and 21 misconduct or game misconducts handed out. Of these, the Islanders received 14 minor penalties, 28 minutes, 9 major penalties, 45 minutes, 8 were fighting majors and another was an elbowing, and 11 misconduct or game misconducts, 110 minutes for a total of 183 penalty minutes. The Penguins received 14 minor penalties, 28 minutes, 7 major penalties, 35 minutes, all of which were fighting majors, and 10 misconduct or game misconducts, 100 minutes, for a total of 163 penalty minutes. Penalty summary. Below is a table showing players from both teams and the number of penalties and penalties in minutes they received.